Welcome to the lovely Oak Room at the Méridien Hotel, who are the generous corporate sponsor of the OFT Fund. Tonight is the launch of the OFT website, and on the website you can see details of every piece that's been bought by the fund so far, with details about the work, about the artists, about where the work has travelled to, and we hope it's just the beginning and that the site will be expanding in the future. I just wanted to very quickly hand over to Mark, who's going to run the panel tonight on the very logical title of Art in the Digital World as a spin-off and a reference to the website.
You're hopefully not going to hear too much from me. I'm just going to chair the debate because the views of the panel, I think, will be more interesting than mine. Sylvain, your view on does art have a legitimate place in the digital world?
I think more and more innovation is no more linked about technology or technique. Innovation is linked with the way you use things. I will take you an example. Facebook and Twitter are not at all, in terms of technology, are not at all a big step. But the way it's used, it's become a revolution. And for me, the digital art, the digital world, what can be interesting is how you're going to use it. So the first question, is it legitimate, or can we show art on the digital world, is yes, we can, but the problem is not, the issue is not if we can, but how we're going to do it. What type of message we want to address, what type of audience we want to reach, and how we're going to reach this audience.
I'm not in the art world, but I am responsible for our cultural coverage across The Guardian and The Observer. But essentially, that's a sort of web-based project. And I thought I'd just really, very quickly whip through the sort of 10 lessons, really, I'm very, very briefly, about how to sort of get the best out of that world. And you tell me whether any of this applies to your world. First, you don't have to cede control to your audience, but you do have to learn to share it. How you listen to your audience and how you interact with them changes what you do and how you do it. Second, you're still a voice of authority, but you're not the only voice of authority, and I think that's really important. On just about anything we do, there are always people with readers with more, who are far more expert than even the best of our journalists. And if you can find them and use them, that is a hugely good thing for us. When you're online, communities never behave as you expect them to, or equally as you want them to. And I think that's a really quite humbling thing. If you think you can read them, you're going to be wrong-footed. Don't be frightened about the anonymity issue online. I mean, in my view, that's a sort of red herring. Much more important is supervising your digital space, making it a good place to be. And for that, and I would say this is true whether you're a curator at the Tate or a columnist at The Guardian, engagement is everything. You cannot begin a conversation in a digital space and then walk away from it. Newspapers are just a means of delivering journalism. Don't be sentimental about platforms. That's a really important one and a really, really difficult one for all journalists. Journalism is thriving, even if newspapers are dying. And I echo also these interesting things around tablets and the iPad and so on, new forms of delivering what you do.
So what we do is a TV channel for art. It's probably one of the biggest databases for this kind of video art in the world because we have lots of response from artists, probably for the reason that artists naturally do not want always to be in their ivory tower. This is what they do. They want to have a social presence. They want to reach more people than just the people that are going to art fairs or going to the gallery. And if they work in the digital media like video art, it might be complicated, it might be difficult to just limit yourself to an edition of 5. That's normally what happens in the art business. You make a video, you make an edition of 5 or 10, and then you sell it, and then it's gone, and not a lot of people will see what you did. So what we offer is a much bigger public to the artists. That's why we have thousands of artists now in the channel. You can consider it's kind of artificial to say you make a limited edition of something that is naturally, technically, endlessly reproducible. Digital art can be reproduced. It's just pixels in the end. There's nothing unique in that. And that's why maybe the project we do, the second way of distributing of economy for video art, has historically somewhere its place.
I'm going to speak about culture really in the broadest terms. It's sort of something of a numbers game in a sense. But one observation is that now we have one medium essentially for all media, and that is, of course, binary code. At one point, media existed in many, many different forms, be it records, be it whatever it may be. And now ostensibly, I mean, this is not a comprehensive statement, but all songs, stories, pictures, books, films, etc., can exist on one platform, which is code. And what, if any, are the philosophical implications of this shift? So that's what I'm going to sort of think about a little bit and not necessarily answer. And in a sense, it's an interesting situation because we have a reversal of history as such, in that typically thoughts, which can be thought of as code, are objectified in the forms of paintings or music or through dance or whatever way you want to express yourself. And now, culture may take physical form briefly, but it is consumed on a global scale, typically as code. And it's also stored in that form. For me, this issue is less about art having legitimacy, but rather, as culture becomes code en masse, how our society, and by extension, our cultural institutions, can cope with that. And put bluntly, the legitimacy of this art has the power to destroy institutions in the longer term. Alongside that, in a sense, and in response to the title of this debate, the philosopher Robin McKay speaks about reality remote controlled by virtualities, which suggests that the real and the virtual are less distinct than we acknowledge, and they're becoming less distinct as time goes on. In summary, the legitimacy of art is beyond question. I think more endangered is a conservative worldview, and particularly a conservative worldview extending from the media and from institutions.
John, thank you. Can I build on your last point? Because you're raising to a sort of a philosophical issue of essentially what the digital space, how art will respond and how it will cope. And beneath that, I think, lies the issue of access to art, the elitism of art, the relationship between audiences and art, and what the digital space will do for that.
The audience is a very complicated thing, and I haven't noticed any fewer people wanting to visit the Tate, even though there are plenty of people who like looking at art through Google Art since it launched the other day. There are different ways to experience this. I mean, fundamentally, institutions and artists and writers and journalists, the problem is, in the end, there has to be a sort of funding basis to this. There has to be some way that you can kind of carry on doing your stuff, or at least change it. In order to make it work. So, I mean, I'm describing a sort of world for us digitally in newspapers, which isn't making the money that funds that kind of journalism.
His audience want to share, and this is very important, the idea of sharing, and thus just having a self-joy of gazing on an artwork. Today, what is important is the joy of gazing, but it's also the joy of experiencing and the joy of sharing. And this is much more important in China. Just to give you two figures, in China you have 450 million people connected, but also 70 million blogs. Weibo, we call this the microblog. Because with the blogs, people share everything, but also they share art. And the artists use the blogs to share ideas. For instance, take Ai Weiwei. So the art by himself is no more just legitimate as an artwork, but it's also legitimate as an experience that people can share with one another.
Some of you may have been to the Gauguin show. Before we did the Gauguin show, we decided that we would blog the entire thing. And Christine Riding, who's a very progressive curator, agreed that she would blog the entire show from beginning to end. Anything from where the artworks come from, how it was developing. And actually over 3.5 months, it's the first time we've done it at Tate, over 3.5 months she posted 36 blogs, anything between 200 and 800 words. They were not artistic treatises, they were not research papers, they were things about the show. Just between 280 and 300,000 page impressions over that period, and 1,200 people commented on what she was writing. And what we learned from it is that there was an insatiable appetite for stuff about art. Now, you might argue that's the Tate and you have a big footprint and blah, blah, blah. That's all true, but all it proved to me is that the appetite for debate, discussion, and slightly lifting the lid on certainly the institution of Tate, and I would suggest beyond the Tate into other art institutions, People have a real appetite for that. How would you feel as an artist if your work is being commented, either positively or negatively, in the digital space?
Well, it is, actually.
And how do you feel?
Well, I mean, one is flattered, inevitably, and one's interested and one tracks a response. I mean, as an artist, you speak socially, and it's just another form of a response, in a sense. So it's a little disconcerting when, people write up sort of course, negative comments, but it's all part of the...
Marcus, how have you dealt with the interaction with your world and the audience?
We will actually build into the channel something that will actually have immediate feedback. Mm-hmm. So that's all about connected TV. That's a bit the future. That will happen in 1 or 2 years. So you can consume the channel passively on the wall as a picture, as we planned it to be. But you can get active in any moment, connect to one artist, one gallery, what's this, I want more, tac. And so you switch from one world, the old linear, to the internet world. So we are very much in between of those. Mm-hmm. And we rely absolutely on what we can get from the feedback of the internet. It's all about building a community that we have the ambition to build on a global level. So our dream is to be one day the platform for exchange of creators from Korea, between Korea and Argentina, between Mexico and Ukraine, and all the other public watching what's happening, putting people together.
So I think the question is slightly morphed into something else, away from legitimacy and more about coping and dealing with, because it's coming, and it's coming like a steam train, and some people are embracing it and others are not. And I'd like to throw out to the audience, have any questions on this or the morphed question that's become?
As you were just saying just now, but you can see you can make the artist piece as big as you like, as small as you like. That takes away the power from the artist. I don't think Rothko would have agreed to put his work online, for instance.
We have artists that don't want to be on the channel because they lose control. But lots of other artists are happy to trade in control for global visibility. And we are looking and finding more and more artists, like what I do, addressing exactly this screen at home that is maybe a 42 screen. And this work is made specifically for this screen. So it's not a video installation, it's not a multi-channel, it's made for this kind of screen.
Can I thank the panel, Sylvain, Georgina, Marcus, and John, for, I think, was a very interesting evening, and viewers in Canada.
Thank you very much to a very brave panel, I think, to engage in a question and in a sort of topic that seems so much, just to paraphrase you, in its infancy. I hope that from Outset's point of view, we have managed to, again, be at the outset of something, at the beginning of a journey. And I hope that in 20 years down the line, when we look back, we will have many more answers to all these questions.